It's my privilege this evening to introduce our guest host. And he is currently, I want to get this right, look at my notes here for his correct title. He is currently the Vice President and Director of Men's Clothing for the Neiman Marcus Stores of America. I present Mr. Derrill Osborn.
Now, all of those of you who know me know there's something wrong with America when I'm voted the most savviest, right? Oh, no. Now, the ultimate insult of getting old is when you come to an affair like this and someone asks my mother if I was her husband. And I'm delighted that my mother is here this evening. She is an alumnus of the Minter Dry Good family. She worked there one summer, and I'd like to just introduce her, my mother, Flossie Osborn. Minter Dry Good closed its doors in 1986 after 86 years of continuous business under the name of Minter's. When one considers the great stores of America like, well, say Saks Fifth Avenue, that's only 62 years old, and Neiman Marcus, which is only today 82 years old, and Harrods of London, which is only 83 years old, the fact that Minter's lasted for so long is really a magnificent factor in, I think, the annals of Texas retailing. The family sold the business, as you know, in 1973, and it continued under different management in the Westgate Mall, River Oaks Mall, and I didn't know until today that it was also in Sweetwater, Texas. But I think the one store that we remember the most was that grand old wonderful store, as Betty said, down on Pine Street. That was the Minter store. And that was the Minter Dry Goods that all of us here really loved the best. There was an air of dignity about the whole Minter family. Although they were Texans, they, to us, were like, you know, the Kennedys, or the Rogers, or the Rockefellers of the East. The Minters had a certain air. They had a certain walk of immense stature. How could we forget Jack Minter, with his little round glasses and his chalk-striped suits? I don't think I ever once saw Jack walking around without a Wall Street Journal under his arm. And then there was W.D. Bill Minter, who was always, I never saw him that he wasn't in a navy blue suit and a white shirt. And he had that shocking flock of white hair, and on a special occasion he wore a little small flower in his lapel. And that always impressed me, and I've always worn a flower in my lapel, and I do every day at work, and I really attribute that to W.D. Minter. With us tonight are a lot of the descendants of the original founders, and they, like their grandparents and great-grandparents, are also pillars in the Abilene's community. And then there's John Dixon Ferguson, Claire's brother, and he looks like to me what George must have looked like when he was a young man. He's already as tall as George. Stand up. And then two other great-grandchildren that belong to Sally Ann Minter are here with us this evening. We want to introduce them. First, Hans. His gorgeous sister named Tiffany, and she has a real New York hairdo. Stand up, Tiffany. Then the children, all the children are here tonight. That. And then a few years ago, her whole house was blown away in that tornado out in Wichita Falls, and she overcame that. And Sally was always the funniest one of the mentors. She had a great sense of humor. When she was a little girl, she was blind as a bat. I don't know if she still is, are you? And she'd take off her glasses down at Mentor's, particularly when a young, handsome guy came in. And I would see her down like this, looking at all the price tags. She couldn't see the price tags. I'd say, Sally, put your glasses back on. It doesn't make any difference. And today you look at Sally, and she's just a beautiful woman, and I'd like for you to stand up and take a bow. Sally Mentor. Isn't she pretty? Then there's that gorgeous Martha. Martha has a complexion that's like a Georgia peach. While in college, I asked Martha to go with me to my fraternity banquet. And I was so impressed that a Mentor would go with me, I didn't know what to do. So I sent a big old black limousine over to fetch her. And I don't know whether I was trying to impress George or impress you, Martha, but I had to stay where I was the banquet chairman, so I had to stay there, and I sent this big limo over to get Martha. So I was waiting there for the limo to come up, and all my fraternity brothers are standing there around me, waiting to see this famous gal, Martha Mentor. So this big limousine drives up, and I was so proud that I could even afford the thing. And I reached and opened the back door, and there was no Martha. And all of a sudden, the front door of the limousine swung open. Out comes Martha. She's sitting up in front with the chauffeur. I was so embarrassed I did not know what to do. Well, that's Martha. Martha's a wonderful lady and a great personality. Please welcome back Martha Mentor. And the two husbands, Mr. Cary Donovan is here, and John Ferguson, please stand up. John, turn around now, we can't see you. Martha told me she married John for his money. But she said after 20 years she finally has fallen in love with him. So good luck. You see, it does happen. Then there's that sweet, sweet Mary Mentor, married to old George. You know, Mary used to smoke. And Lord, you didn't have to see a car coming down the road, you just looked for the puff of smoke. And when Mary smoked, I don't know if you ever saw her, she smoked like this, and she looked in every direction, she never looked down the road. And she's a wonderful lady, and Mary, you know, a few years ago had a stroke. And she overcame that stroke physically, and today she's back in great shape. It's a wonderful lady, and listen, she'll have to go to heaven, you know, married to old George Mentor, as long as she's been married to him. So, Mary, we're so glad to have you here. Please stand up and take a bow.
He was always Little George when I married him.
Little George.
Little George.
What happened?
All these people that knew him before I did called him Little George, not Old George.
Well, we're glad to know that, Mary. Thank you. In my life, I've had the fortune, personally, of having great teachers. Men of, I guess, great dignity in the field of retailing, like Adam Gimbel, who was the founder of Saks Fifth Avenue, and I worked there for 10 years. And Stanley Marcus today over at Neiman's is a good friend of mine, a great teacher. But somehow in the hollow halls of my memory banks, there's one here who kind of emerges above them all. In my youth, while I was working for old George Mentor, little George Mentor, at the age of 19, George just scared me to death. He was so tall, you know, and I was little at that point, not as big as I am now. And it seemed like that every time I looked around, George was looking at me, and he was seeing what I was doing. And we used to stock shirts very high in those days. And I would redo them and redo them, redo them, and it seemed like George would come around just to be mean and pull out the bottom one. And I'd have to redo them again. So I just stacked and stacked, and let me tell you a very interesting story about Minters. They were people who really serviced the customers of Abilene. Really serviced the customers of Abilene. Not like today, there was no such thing as sales help. There were people who were trained and knew their job well and knew about the products that they were selling. You didn't dare stand around in Minter Dry Goods. You better be paying attention and knowing when the customer came in, you better jump over there. And George did something that was very interesting. If we were talking or doing something and there was a customer that came in and we were not paying attention, all of a sudden you heard, you remember that? Yeah. Let me do it again. He took out a big old silver dollar and he just tapped. And man, if you heard that tap, you better move. I'll tell you a very interesting story, George, and this is a true story. In Tiffany's in New York City, if you ever go there and you stand there for a few minutes, you hear around the room, you don't ever hear anyone hollering out. And I asked Walter Hoving a few years ago when he was chairman, how did that come about? And you know what he said to me? He said, you know, we had a young man who came to work from us from a store out in West Texas named Minter Dry Goods, and he put that in the suggestion box. And we do that at Tiffany's for the last 30 years. So you see, George, you're a very famous man. Ladies and gentlemen, we know George as a friend, and we know him as a great merchant. We know him as our mentor, M-E-N-T-O-R. He's a rancher today. He was mayor of this city at one time, remember that? And he's been a civic leader. He's a wonderful man. He goes to church, and he's a good judge of horses, and a good judge of cattle. Mary says he's a real good judge of women. And we want to salute you, George, by just standing up and giving you a big old enthusiastic hello and come up and talk to us.
Kissed the corn. Lots of slobbered on it. It's a little bit rich for me. But I don't want to take credit for that. That was Bill's grandfather. And he really hit that thing just exactly right, because when he did, I mean, they jumped, including me. But when I talked earlier to shakers and movers of this event tonight, I wondered if you all could remember more in the past than what you can remember yesterday. And if so, I thought I would like if you'll just give me a little bit of your time, some of the things that part of you went through down there at the store. Maybe it will remind you of some good or some bad times or some funny times, I don't know. But when I first went there, why, they told me that the store had certain policies. One of them was that we had to maintain quality, we had to have fashion, and we had to give service to the customer, and we were a one-price house. Now, what did that mean? That meant that a parent could send a 5 or a 6-year-old child to the store, and they would receive the same service and buy at the same price that the president of the bank could. So we tried to maintain that right along. As we went along, we had some things that happened. In relation to that sort of thinking, one day a woman called me and said that her husband had died, and that he had bought a pair of pants there that she would like to return. And I told her, well, of course, we'd be glad to give the credit on it. So she brought those in, and Betty Massey was cashier then on the first floor. And I took the trousers over there, and at that time we marked merchandise so we could tell whether it was what month and what year it came in. So Betty looked at it and said, "These trousers have been out 11 years." We gave the woman credit because we wanted to have a little bit later on, the merchants there decided that they would put holes in the sidewalk, put flags out on occasions and holidays and so forth. And we had a colored janitor then by the name of Henry Webb. And incidentally, Miss Green had taught him so well how to pack that he could pack fine china and crystal and ship it, and it never came back, never broken or anything. Anyway, that's just one of Miss Green's attributes. But one day, about on 1 February the 22nd, Bill came down and he walked in. He said, "Henry," said, "put the flag out today." Said, "This is George Washington's birthday." And Henry had a habit of talking to himself as he was working. He walked down the aisle and he said, "Yes, sir, I'll put that flag." I said, "I knew they thought a lot of each other, but I didn't know they wanted to put it out on birthdays for each other." Anyway, we progressed a little bit further along, and we had a woman at that time who was in charge of our cosmetic department, and her hair was about the color of a caution light in a traffic signal. But she decided that we were not getting the youthful customer into the store. So we took her advice, and at that time there was a magazine called 17 that the girls in high school and college read just about like a Bible. So we put on a series of 17 style shows over a few years. And each time we did, the editor in New York would send down their fashion editor to commentate the shows for us. So we progressed from that into trying to build the store into what we used as a slogan, the fashion star of West Texas. And about that time, we understood there was a dance band in New York and about as famous as Lawrence Welk. And his name was Little Jack Little, a cheerful little earful. And we found out that he was coming through Abilene on his way from New York to Los Angeles. So we got him to stop over and we put a fashion show on out at the Fairpark Auditorium, which was the biggest auditorium at that time prior to the Civic Center. And you wouldn't believe it, but Betty Massey and an insurance man by the name of Jack Wheeler opened that show by riding a bicycle built for two across the stage. And, I'd like to say that it was a very successful show, and we played the standing room only. And it was so much fun that the band wanted to play a dance after the show was over with. But we had some representatives from the different colleges, and we didn't think that would be a very wise thing to do. So we progressed on a little bit more, and I know all of you remember those 50-cent sack lunches that Mac Evelyn fixed for us, and we used to advertise to the gals that worked downtown, come up and have a 50-cent lunch and sit down and watch an informal showing, and we hoped to spend a little money. So we did that for a while, and we were going along, and at that time we were having an awful hard time with decorators. They are a pretty hard bunch, and until Carl Walmart came along. Thank goodness for Carl. But anyway, we used to decorate the store for Christmas on the night before Thanksgiving, and be a lot of people in there helping the decorator and work all night and so forth. So one night we were doing that, and I just happened to be out, and about 12 o'clock I went in the store and found everybody upstairs near Ms. Gardner's serendipity shop. Now, I didn't know what that meant, and I couldn't spell it. But I knew that gifts were really going great guns. But anyway, here they were up there, and there was a decorator hanging to the cornice like a monkey above. He shielded the lights above the glass showcases. Well, I finally pried him loose from that and got him over to the elevator, and we started down, and as the door shut and we started down, I noticed a pretty good sized knife in his hand. Well, anyway, we got down to the first floor, and I got him out the front door. So, talking about Christmas, one day, the store was crowded with customers, and a blue norther was blowing outside. And in the front door about 2 o'clock came one of the town characters, just reeling from one side to the other and barefooted. And he cleared the aisles from the front to the shoe department at the back. And he sat down there and he said, "I've got to have some shoes." Well, of course he didn't have any money. He'd already spent that on Christmas cheer. If we were going to sell any of the women some fancy shoes to use at Christmas time, we had to get him out of there, so we gave him a pair of shoes, kissed him out the back door. So we've had things that went from one thing to another. Before I quote, I want to say something like this about, we had a woman, a lady, or whatever we want to call her, named Marion Noble, who was up on the second floor. And she was really a fine character and had a lot of fun about her, and she could make people feel good and get in a good humor quicker than anybody. Well, again, during the Christmas holidays, some old bow-legged cowboys went upstairs, the second floor, got off the elevator, and Marion went over and she said, "Could I help you find something up here?" He said, "Yes," said, "I want to buy a brassiere." And so she thought, "Well, I'll just name the best brand we have." She said, "Well, would you want Playtex?" He said, "Yes, but I can't right now, I'm double booked." I want to tell you how much we appreciate you, and I know that Julie and Dale join me in this. We know what jewels we had when we had you on. You had everything that it took. And so the people of the area, it didn't make a difference whether it was Mineral Wells or El Paso, they knew it too, and they came to him. And when Abilene became a military town and the people were transferred out of here to other parts of the country or even overseas, back came the mail orders. They wanted you to help them out. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate more than we can tell you just how much this evening means to us. It's a little hard not to be teary-eyed when you have an occasion like this, but I'd just like to say that I'd like to hug all of you. Thank you.
Unfortunately, most of us here did not know, oh, I'm sorry, Carl, Mary Minder's given the rose of the evening, the Rose Farmer. A lot of us in the room were not fortunate in knowing Vera Minder, but I know when you pass Vera Minder's fountain downtown, you think about Vera Minder. I understand she was a great lady. I knew W.D. Minder, Bill's father, and we all knew him, and as we mentioned, we remember both of those great people this evening. And representing the mother and dad is Bill Minder, Jr. Would you welcome him to say a few words?
Thank you.
And we have two special presentations we'd like to make on roses tonight. One to Mrs. Doc Anderson, for who we believe has the longest tenure of working with mentors here in Abilene. And one for Mrs. Maybelle Pear, who was our elevator operator, for Miss Congeniality.
Talk about funny stories on the elevator. You know, that elevator was something else, wasn't it, Miss Pear? Sometimes you get in the thing and you close the doors and it would move.
That's true.
So you'd have to open the doors again and close them and it would move. So one time, pardon me?
I want to say I had the other kind of trouble. It'd start up and wouldn't stop.
Did you hear that? She said she had the other kind of trouble where it started up and the damn thing wouldn't stop. But I remember one time, the Christmas season, we were very busy and that elevator was loaded, and this little old lady got on about 90 years old, and she said, "Mezzanine, please." And Miss Pear closed the door, and it didn't move. She opened the door. The lady walked off, said, "Thank you." And we never saw her again. Now we want to have a little fun, All of those people who worked in the Westgate Mall Minter store who are here this evening, would you please stand up? Let us see who you are, and you're here. Worked in the Westgate store. How many worked in the Sweetwater store? Is anyone here from that? Oh, fabulous. And anyone from the River Oak store? Are you here? Let's give all these folks a big hand. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start down on the ground floor of the old Minter dry goods store. And I'm going to call out the department, and if you were in that department, would you please stand? Tell us your name, tell us how many years you worked at Minter's, and if you know anything funny about selling or customer story that you'd like to share, think about that a minute. And while you're thinking about that, let's remember some of the people who are not here this evening. Mr. Minter mentioned Henry. You know, Lord, I looked at that fan out there, and I thought about Henry. I think that fan was down in Henry's boiler room all the time. And I don't know if you folks know, but Henry loved Minter dry goods. You know, he was buried with his Minter cap on. Are you aware of that? He was buried with his Minter cap on. Then there was old Lucille. Remember Lucille? Oh, Lord, she was something else. She always wore a maid uniform. It was crisp. She never knew my name. She always called me, "You dog." I think she called everybody dog. I'm not sure. But I love Lucille, and we miss her tonight. And Alfred Alexander, Lord, he could sell more suits than anybody in the world. And Coke Mingus. Remember old Coke? Lord, he was something else. You couldn't get him away from the front door. And the telephone would ring, and he would just ignore it. You could holler fire, and he wouldn't move. And if you got up close to him, he'd just edge up a little further so he could grab that customer when he came in. You remember that? Then there was old Dixie Reese, Lord. She was Mr. Minter's spy. You couldn't go to the bathroom without Dixie running down and tell George you went to the bathroom. And I never knew a woman that wore more makeup in my life than Dixie Reese. So her lipstick was painted on, and her eyebrows were way back here on the back side of her head. You know, the funeral director told me before they could get all of Dixie's makeup on her that they had to embalm her twice. Now, I know if Dixie was here tonight, she'd laugh at that, so I'm not telling a story out of tune. Today, I had a sentimental journey. If you want a sentimental journey, you ought to go down to the old Pine Street store. It's open now, you know. It's something like, it's called Under One Roof. But it was just great, and I walked around down to George's office and the credit office and back in the display. And I walked into the alteration shop, and I just couldn't believe on the bulletin board, it was the funniest thing I've ever read. It was about double knit pants. You remember when they were in? Now listen to this. After a seam is open, use a great amount of steam to flatten out the creases. Then when the seam is resewn, you should again use a lot of steam and a sponge cloth. In pressing double knit garments, it's largely a matter of steaming. Use very little pressure. And for God's sake, don't lock the press. The pants will melt on the burner. Is that wonderful alteration lady here tonight? Miss Anderson, I also found this. I have to give this to you. It says, why is there never enough time to do it right, but always enough time to do it over? Where's Miss Anderson? Now I want to give you something else. This I don't believe. Inseam length charge, $1. Waist, $1. No wonder you had to close the store, George. Crotch, $2. Sleeves, $3. And all of that gorgeous work for so little. Well, here are 2 mementos for you, my dear.
It was good.
37.5 years. Is anyone here longer than 37.5 years who worked for Minners? Well, let's give her another hand. Okay, here we go. We're going to start on the lower level, boys department. If you ever worked in that shop, please stand up. Come on now. Oh, Lord, looky here. Let's start in the back. Tell us who you are. What's your name now? Ruby Watts. Now just stand up, Ruby. Yes, ma'am. Who's that colleague of yours next to you? Levon West. Now, did you all get along down in that boy shop? Who was the best sales girl? Now, Ruby, I know you have a funny story to tell us. You don't have one. Ruby, how long did you work at Mender's? 26 years. And Levon, 10 years. And ladies over here, and your name? Tell everybody again, we got a competition out here. Pauline Yost.
I'm Nadine White, but I didn't work in the boys' department too long. I worked in the men's department and the accessory department first. And I always wanted to go back to the men's department.
That's the best department,
That's the
right?
best.
Well, it's good to see you, sweet ladies. Thank you. How about the men's alterations where we know Marin? Let's go up to the second floor, ready-to-wear department. All you ladies who worked in ready-to-wear, please stand up. Oh, we got a lot of them. And tell us your names. We'll start over here with Mary Helen.
I'm Mary Helen Gardner.
Mary Helen Gardner.
I had the gift department really, but we all sold anywhere we could and anywhere anybody wanted us to sell.
And Mary Helen, you worked for Men's how long?
27 years.
27 years. Betty?
As cashier and then floor manager.
And floor manager, and how long were you at Men's?
Long enough. I
Yep.
can't remember. Just years and years and years.
Betty, I'm sure you could share some great stories with us.
Probably.
The next reunion, you think of some
I
now.
will.
Yes, ma'am.
Whaley Bounds, 3 years, mostly in the bow brigging for John.
Now, who are these great ladies here? Now, turn around so we can all see you here. Turn around, ladies. Face the group. Tell us your name. We'll start with you, Velma.
Velma Green.
Velma Green.
I started out in the gift department and was the cashier.
And gift department cashier. And how long did you work at Mendes?
23 years.
Boy, we have a lot of people in the 20s. It's just amazing. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Onita Lusby, and I worked in ready-to-wear, and I imagine about 5 years.
I bet you were some salesman. You look like it. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Offie Curry, and I worked in the ready-to-wear. I'd work a while and quit a while and go back and work a while, so off and on about 20 years.
Another 20 years. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Nina Comer, and I work on the second floor, 28 years.
28 years. And selling ready-to-wear.
Well, all 4 departments.
I bet you were some sales lady. Yes, ma'am.
I'm on my champion. I worked at least 30 years.
In ready-to-wear?
Get ready to wear. Top champion. Top champion.
And yes, ma'am.
I'm Alice Hastings and I was ready.
Alice, how are you? I haven't seen you this evening. I get to hug you a little later. Welcome to all of you ladies. Men's alterations. Miss Beale, where are you? There you are. How are you? Did you say 50? 15 years. Wonderful.
50.
Did you, maybe I'm 5-0? 15 years, I'm sorry. I was fixing to take that rose away from you know who. We're happy to see you. Anyone else in the alteration department? Now how about children's or gifts or anything else on the second floor that we may have missed? Yes, ladies.
I'm Sally Cloyd,
Hello, Sally.
and I have another distinction. In 1923, when I was 9 years old, my grandfather brought me over to the second floor at Minner's, and while he stood there visiting with Mr. Will, the older Mr. Will, the sales girls would try dresses on me. He bought me 2 dresses, and I never will forget those dresses.
What a great story. Yes, ma'am.
Donna Saffel, and I worked there for 4 years.
Laura, are you leaving me?
Laura.
Laura, we have to say hello to you, this gorgeous woman who worked in credit, handed me my paycheck every week. How distinguished you look, Laura. How distinguished you look. And have not changed, that's right. Yes, ma'am.
Upstairs, and the men were all scooting around, and Betty said, "Hey, we'll get me a broom," and I feel that back.
I've lived in Worthing Valley, and I worked in the children's department. And if Mr. Will decided to, he put me over sportswear and ready to wear either one. Apparently, I fitted anywhere. But he and Mr. George sure moved me around.
It's probably because you could fit in anywhere.
Well, I tried.
It's good to see you.
Thank you. Sportswear.
Sportswear, let's have those ladies, if we missed them. Please stand up.
And I was also lingerie for about 15 years. But I came to work for Minner's in 62.
1962.
That's right.
And you, ma'am?
Ike Samuels, I was at Railroad when they opened, and then went there to Westgate. I was over the sportswear.
Glad to have you ladies here. Now the men's department. Anyone here from men's who we haven't already mentioned? I think a lot of those people are up in heaven now. Anyone that we...
Oh, we are all.
Oh, well, please. They're all up there. Thank goodness. Yes, sir.
My name's Towers. I didn't work too many years, but I enjoyed the years I did.
Were you in men's clothing, sir? I'm glad to see you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Johnny Gist, and I worked in the men's department for a while, and then I worked all over the floor, wherever I was needed downstairs.
Mr. Mender just said you could work anywhere, too. We have anyone here from cosmetics? Yes? You're welcome.
Again.
Okay, and here's a wonderful, sweet woman here. Can you stand up and tell us who you are, please, ma'am?
Melba Fleming.
Melba Fleming. Miss Fleming is 87 years old. And how long did you work in the cosmetic department?
Well, I worked in the cosmetic and back in the millinery, in the hosiery department, and anywhere that Mr. George wanted to put me.
Well, we're so delighted.
I enjoyed everything I worked.
Just want to say for Miss
Oh,
Fleming.
Darryl, we had a mezzanine too.
No, we got one story. We're coming to
Miss
mezzanine.
Fleming introduced ready-to-wear or sportswear to the first floor at Minner's because Bill's father one day said, "Why don't you put dresses down there between the stairways?" And I said, "Well, Bill, it's just a competition with the second floor." He said, "Oh, no, not like that." I said, "Well, what would you buy?" He said, "I'd buy Lois on $8.95. Well, Miss Fleming bought every dress they had till they changed the line, and then she'd do it again, and it just sellout every time. Couldn't help it at $8.95. One thing that I forgot, you know, at my age, you forget pretty easily. I meant to say that our MC here is a man of varied accomplishments and interest. And he came back from World War II, and we got quite a bit of information from him there on how to do some different things. I won't go into that. But while he was gone, he attended Winston Churchill's funeral and the royal family's wedding in Greece. So he was going along in top flight company, and he's been that way ever since.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
In the 1930s, while I was a student at ACC, I worked in the afternoons in the cosmetic department with Mrs. Mother. 25 cents an hour, and I never saw a paycheck.
I remember those wonderful paychecks. They were envelopes. Remember those little yellow envelopes? And I think Minna was the only one that ever paid everybody in cash. The only company that I've ever worked for that paid you in cash. At the top, on my envelope, it'd say $60 minus tax, minus $50 for charge account, and I'd have about $10 left, and my poor mother would have to give me some more money for the week. But I remember those envelopes. Now, I know there must be some people here that we have missed. Would you please stand and let us know who you are? You worked in cosmetics,
yes,
didn't you?
I was in cosmetics for a while under Vivian.
Well, stand up, Linda, and tell us who you are, this gorgeous blonde up here.
And in jewelry.
And in jewelry.
And the junior department on first floor when they came to. I worked with Maggie Palmer. She was the buyer.
Now, please don't tell us that you were there for 40 years.
No way. I think it was 12. I think.
Really, 12 years. Well, Linda, that's great. Anyone else that we've missed? Please stand up. Shoe department.
Now, shoe department, I worked for Ms. Anderson on the second floor.
That's right.
A long time.
Tell us your name.
Margaret Harrelson Davis.
Hello, Margaret. It's good to see you.
Skip Donahue and sportswear downstairs, cosmetics and jewelry.
Skip, you maintain your schoolgirl figure very well. Thelma. Thelma's already been. Thelma? There she is.
I worked in a gift wrapping department. We enjoyed wrapping their Christmas gifts. We had a there. I miss Luella today. I was looking forward to seeing her.
Where is Luella? Not able to come.
She has illness in her family.
We're very happy to see you. I think of Luella a lot too. I also think of Mr. Floyd up in the on the mezzanine. He is in I think a rest home, isn't he? Yes, ma'am.
Ruby Riddle, and I work in the office, the credit office.
And Ruby has a martini voice.
Yes. I made them happy and I made them sad. I'd open it and then I'd ask them for it. We had a good crew, however, so many of our bunch are not here now. Gloria, Laura, and I, Mason Sayed.
With Miss Maddie too, Maddie Gaskell.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miss Maddie.
Miss Boyd, Miss Gail.
Miss Boyd, gone. Miss Gail.
So, I thought some stinkers should be here.
Well, Thelma, we're glad that you are. How can we forget this lovely lady?
Thank you. I'm Faye Madden from the mezzanine. East Good and Lennon. Mr. Bogle with my meeting.
You sure was. And Faye, it's good to see you.
I worked 18 years.
And I want to introduce that wonderful daughter next to you, who is always a wonderful part of our family. Alice, stand up. How are you? What?
I ran the green monster down in the basement. That's right.
What was the green monster?
Monogram.
Oh, that's right. How could we forget the monogramming machine?
And I also have them the gift wrapping in the back room, all the tickets and stuff. That was good hard work.
Well, Alice, you always had a smile on your face. And it's really nice to see you. And you know, you get prettier as time goes along.
Well, I told him that I hadn't been convinced.
Have we missed anyone else? Gladys, where are you, Gladys? Gladys, how could we miss you, honey?
I sold shoes for, I guess, about 20 years.
Do you still have that big old diamond on your hand? Did you ever get a husband back there?
I sure did.
Oh, you did? Oh, fabulous. Well, it's so good to see you. It really is nice to see you.
I have a story about Mr. George.
Let's hear it.
I want to tell you about Mr. George. My children were in high school. I never sold anything in my whole life. He said, come over, I want to talk to you. So I went over there for an interview, and he was going to hire me down on the first floor as a cashier, the sportswear, the cosmetics, the jewelry, everything down there. And he was going to teach me, and I thought, if this man is going to pay me to teach me a job, I'm going to go. So I went down there, and he taught me well. Mr. George, I'm still working. I didn't get off tonight till 6 o'clock. But he taught me well. I told the girls, I said, I don't know if I'm doing this right or not. And so the next week in my paycheck, I had a nickel an hour raise. And I was so thrilled over that nickel. I had done something right. Thank you, Mr. George.
He actually gave you a nickel raise.
A nickel raise.
They tell me old George has the first nickel we ever made. Who else? Yes, ma'am. Let's hear it.
On the mezzanine, and I was selling Lily pickleball. And so I sold pickleball, and she came back to me and she said, how do you know when to tell them to buy? I said, well, you just kind of look at them and tell them to buy. I'm like, how do you know when to tell them to buy this?
Anyone else?
Francis Carson.
Francis, where are you, honey? Francis. Francis Carson. How are you, Francis?
I'm fine, thank you. I was in Peace Goods. It was my first love on basketball, Peace Goods. I was there 15 years, but I worked downtown. I was at the Poplar when it closed. And Mr. George called me and offered me a job. Mr. Gibson didn't, and I took Mr. Winter.
We're so glad to see you. Yes, sir.
I'll probably have the shortest tenure of anyone here with Mentor Dry Goods Company. About 1940, I was in high school. You remember me? I ran Miss Pear's elevator. I ran Mr. George's vacuum cleaner up on the second floor. I ran that push broom down on the first floor at night just before we closed up. I believe that Peace Goods was over downstairs then. We went over to Peace Goods over there at that time. And it seemed like one time I worked over in the shirt or anywhere anybody that's kind of told me to.
I think we should pay homage tonight to all the husbands and wives here who did not work at Mentor's but had to wait till they come home at night. Will you please stand up and let's give you one round of applause. All the husbands who were the company of their lives. Oh, there are a lot of them. Have we missed anyone at all who worked at Mentor's through these wonderful years downtown? Yes, ma'am. Tell us who you are.
Myrtle Rogers.
Myrtle.
And I worked in ladies' alterations. I didn't work for 2 years. But I have to tell you something. Sitting in the sewing machine all day, I didn't get much exercise, so I always used the stairway. Well, Mrs. Pear one day asked me if I didn't like her.
Someone else over here. Yes, ma'am.
I worked at Reservoir.
Hello, Alice. For a long time.
We have Cody Allen who worked in advertising.
Miss Allen, hello.
I'm Cody Allen. I worked with Carl 2 years in advertising.
Hello, Cody. Good to see you. Anyone else we missed? Because we want to just say hello to you. Please stand up.
I'm Mary Beth Gray, and I manage the Sweetwater store. And tonight I dragged out a 12-year-old Chessa Davis dress that was teapot, a 10-year-old Mentor's handbag. And they all the boxes always have one piece. And I have never sent you a bill for the ulster that I got because Sweetwater had I know it's the oldest gas-fired boiler in the United States. I have to go down every day and check on it. Turn my hair white.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, ma'am.
I'm Hubbard Martin, and I work with Miss Anderson in alterations.
We're so glad to have you here. You know, the tailors and the alteration people were the great support people of our store. Yes, ma'am.
I thought some of the funniest things that ever happened at the store was during the Camp Barkley days. I've often thought I'd like to write a book and put all these things in it, but I'm going to tell you one or two. We had a lady that worked on the second floor, I imagine all of you remember a long time ago. She wasn't hurt with beauty, I'd say. So this little boy got off the elevator. He was out at Camp Barkley, and he looked around and saw her, and he said, "How much do you think she'd charge to haunt a house?" Another day, this boy came in, and I was starting to wait on him for the Christmas present for his mother. And he didn't know what size she was, and I was trying my best to find out what to sell him. And I said, "Is she as large as I am?" He looked me up and down. He said, "Goodness no."
Do we ever have any other great stories someone would like to share with us? Any other great stories? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say something else about Miss Pear. I used to relieve her on the elevator a lot, and I think Miss Pear is probably the best advertisement that Minter's ever had. Because I know I've had lots of mothers say that they could not, you know, especially people from out of town, could not come to Abilene without coming to see the alligator lady. A lot of kids would say the alligator lady. And I can remember so many times opening up that elevator door, and these kids had smiles up to here and their eyes this big, and you could just see the smile falling off their face, and they'd say, "But where's that nice lady?" And she was really wonderful. That's right.
Miss Pear, we want to salute you once again. Mary Helen?
I have one quick story. We all are familiar with our Congressman Charles Stenholm. His wife was a great shopper at Mentor's, and especially in the gift department. One October, she came in and she said, "Would you possibly get out your Christmas decorations and let me see them?" I said, "Well, they're down in the basement and I can't get to them." She says, "I'm expecting a baby any minute and I can't get back before Christmas." Well, you know what we did? We went to the basement and brought all those boxes upstairs. She got down in the middle of the floor in the gift department and selected all of her Christmas decorations. And I will always remember her. She could hardly get around, and the baby was born that night.
Well, folks, we've had a wonderful evening this evening.
Oh, yes, sir.
Carl, will you please stand up? The man behind the scenes. You know, we oftentimes forget about Carl, but Carl really was the man who did everything, and he was just as nice then as he is today, and it's good to see you. Carl, we just got to find you a wife before we find myself a wife. Yes, ma'am.
Introduce your lovely mother.
I will, but she hasn't, she's never stood up, so please stand up and say hello. Flossie Bay Osborn. Thank you. We've had a wonderful time. I was so delighted to be asked to come, and I'm sure you all feel as nostalgic about this evening as I do. And isn't it great to see this gorgeous ladies here in all of these elegant dresses and hairdos, and the people who made Mentor Dry Goods as great of a store as it was. So we bid all of you adieu. On the table is a small little gift for you, a little perfume package. Take it home, enjoy it. And if you'd like to stay a little while and get to talk to one another, please do. Thank you all so much. Yes, ma'am. One other.
I'll give Mr. George a big hand.
You see, George, it's really not all blarney. You have a soft spot in all of our hearts. Carl, is there anything else that we should mention?
I believe that about takes care of it.
Good night, folks, and thank you very much for coming.
Once an advertising man, always an advertising.
I guess. Carl can really put it together.
Don't remember, I didn't know Henry. I bet he was 90 years old. He was still working.
Well, I don't know when did he die?
Oh, he's been dead a long, long time. He shuffled. He was so old he couldn't walk.
But was he alive as late as 1960? I don't remember.
Oh, yes, I think he was. Yeah.
I think I remember him.
He was old.
And he always wore a cap,
Yeah.
you know, and very old.
He was the last to wear a cap.
He would go down in the bar room. He stayed down there and his hideaway down there. And this old family. But he was such a dear old person. Oh, I loved having the gift department. I couldn't have been any happier with it if it'd been my own. Mr. Mary turned it over to me, and I ran it like my own shop. And it was fun.
I remember Bill's father used to kind of lurk around that area.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he stayed up on the second floor all the time.
Yeah, and he would, he came up to me one time, just really scared me to death. I was looking at a display, and your displays were always wonderful.
Oh,
partners.
Well,
Yeah,
it was
they
a
were.
joy.
She did a good
Carl
job.
always had such pretty
Miss
displays.
Gertner always did the gift shop.
Oh, man.
Well, I tell you, he just came up and he said, do you like that? And I went,
Scared you to death. Where is Betty? Did she leave?
I guess she's already gone.
Carl, what time are you coming in the morning?
Oh, I think around 8 or 8:30 because I'm
I'll
going to
tell
church
you
about
what,
9:30.
my grandson's here, and I'm cooking dinner for my whole family tomorrow. I'm not even going to church. I don't think I can come in the morning, but I can do anything I can.
Well, you know, I brought it all up in my car, so
I've got my picture, my book, my magazine, and
the plaque.
yeah, and what else was I going? Oh, this was. We just couldn't believe it when we found all these. It's just box after box of stuff like this, and these are tags and things.
oh, it's just incredible.
You already through? What? Are we ready? Okay. Well, Carl, we had fun.
Well, we sure did.
We'll have to have lunch again sometime
That's
to
right.
talk about what we did.
Even without a reunion.
Well, listen, we'll settle up if there's any settling up. If you want to leave it like it is or whatever, well, we'll get it all. Lindsay and Bill, we'll see you again.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Helen.
Scott, this is Carl.